This is what Waypoint Web3, place where we talk about all things Web3 gaming. It's a weekly Twitter space that started to kind of have a safe and productive space to discuss all of these things about this evolving space. Co-produced by Sanctor Capital and United Gamers. So thank you both for that. This is a recorded spaces, so we will be publishing a link to the recording later on. And just a few official things I have to go through. So my name is Ilya. I'm one of the co-founders and partners in Sanctor Capital. So here's a few disclosures that I must give you. None of this is financial or legal advice. All the opinions are my own. There may be companies and or assets that are mentioned throughout the talk in which we have held, are holding, or may be intending to acquire positions. So in the interest of full disclosure, we have backed United Gamers, the Umbrella Network, and Unlocked. I think that should cover us. So without further ado, I want to introduce our topic and our speakers. Today we'll be talking about GameFi and specifically about the kind of the products and the tools around the financial aspects of the Web3 gaming economy. And we have some awesome speakers today, and I'd like them to introduce themselves. So I'll go around, call you up, and just say your name, introduce yourself, and a little bit about how you got into Web3 gaming and what you're building. First on my screen is Sam Kim. So Sam, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everybody, or wherever you are. My name is Sam Kim. I am a senior advisor both to Umbrella Network, which is a layer 2 Oracle that operates at high speeds and low cost for getting off-chain data on-chain, accessible on-chain. And furthermore, I am also a senior advisor at Metalcore, which is a mech warrior-based 50v50 PvP game that is set to launch later this year.
Awesome, thank you. In the interest of full disclosure, we're also back in Metalcore and really excited about that game. Next on my screen, Skill Labs.
Hey guys, I'm Iskander from Skill Labs. So Skill Labs is a platform that provides tools for NFT investors, analytical tools, and our aim is to bring transparency to GameFi. Previously I worked as an executive producer for several MMO titles. Also worked and built some products for gamers where gamers could earn money by providing coaching services. And that's basically how I got to Web3, because I was really struck with how transparent the space is and how many cool features we can build around that.
Awesome. Next up is Carlos.
Hey guys, this is Carlos from Unlocked. What we're building at Unlocked is an NFT lending protocol. We basically want everyone to be able to borrow against their NFTs instantly through a set of partners that do real-time appraisal protocols. We really want to give the highest loan-to-value, or one of the highest loan-to-values, because what we do is trade-based appraisal, right? So we want to have very accurate appraisal, and instead of just allowing people to borrow against the floor pricing of the project, we'll do trade-based appraisal. So super excited to be here with all of you. Really bullish about GameFi despite these tough times, and excited to build at the intersection of NFTs and DeFi.
Awesome, thank you, Troy.
Hey guys, this is Luke from BridgeSplit. BridgeSplit, we're building structured products for NFTs, so we do all kinds of different types of pooling, fractionalization, and ultimately the goal of what we're building is to enable DeFi protocols to accept NFTs as the value that they have in a way that's kind of composable or interoperable, the same way any other fungible token is. So broadly building, I guess, at the intersection of NFTs and DeFi as well.
Awesome. Mr. Jace.
Hey guys, my name is JC and I work as the growth executive at BeerDAO. So just a short background of BeerDAO. We at BeerDAO act as the asset factory of the metaverse. So basically we provide digital assets at a high volume that is usually tailored to the specifications of the guilds we service. So my job is to be able to look for synergies between these different organizations, whether it may be guilds, platforms, etc. Right? So just before this, I just got into Web3 through the Axie boom last year around June, where SLP was around 12 cents, I think, and it really just took off from there. So yeah, that's basically the short background about me.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Juan.
Hey guys, nice to meet you guys. My name's Juan. I'm the co-founder of Metabase. So Metabase essentially is an application that connects players and guilds within the GameFi industry with an off-ramp facility. So we're trying to aim for the Indonesian market specifically to allow people without prior cryptocurrency knowledge to extract value from different blockchain games. So thank you.
Awesome. So we have some great speakers, and I want to have kind of an open discussion with about 10-15 minutes to go. I'll open up to audience for questions, but until then, all the speakers, I'll just open up with some topic of questions, and you don't have to go in any particular order. If you have something to say, feel free to just jump in. And so just to start, let's start really broadly. People use GameFi as a term pretty loosely, meaning everything from Web3 games to the actual financial tooling. I'm curious, what does GameFi mean to you, and why is it important in the context of gaming?
I'll take this one. I'll kick it off. So, like you were alluding to earlier, like GameFi, it's a very large umbrella that we put things under, right? And I approach it. I look at it more from the game developer and user experience perspective, along with kind of the data requirements. And so, for us, it's a lot of it is focused on gaming operates at speeds that blockchains typically don't. Right? For example, at Metalcore, our publishing platform is designed to handle something in the order of 8 million data points per second. Obviously, no blockchain is going to do that anytime in the near future. So it's, we're looking, when Metalcore team and the Umbrella team work together and kind of collaborate, what we're looking at is what data do we bring available on chain in order to improve the user experience, unlock, prediction markets, or unlock lending platforms, NFT lending platforms, right? What is the data from within the game that they're going to need in order to properly value an asset? So for me, it's, I think it's so early that the definition of GameFi is gonna constantly grow, and we're probably gonna need to start subdividing it into more specific areas. But the areas that I like to focus and the way where I see a lot of the value being unlocked from is from the activation of the data from within the game to the GameFi protocols, like so many of the ones that are on this call today. And so, that's the way I approach it.
I can add on that. For me, I think the GameFi is a sphere or a market of products and services that help to share a part of ownership of the gaming economies and take it a bit from the developer and give more to players. Because we've seen a lot of different economies, right, in the games. Some of them really big games like World of Warcraft, Lineage 2, some other MMO titles, which had this really big economies, and but they were completely shady, because you could get banned if you would sell some in-game currency, stuff like that. And GameFi for me is a natural next step in building those economies, where developer has incentive to to start sharing this with players, and by building a larger community of gamers around them, and getting a smaller cut of a bigger pie, I'd say.
Okay, I'll add some few points here just to add to both of their points. We think that GameFi is a great onboarding program that brings people towards the Web3 space. The financial incentives alone has proven to be a great way to reach mass adoption in Web3, right? So GameFi has also been very beneficial to developing countries such as the Philippines, Venezuela and Brazil, etc. And the income earned from these play-to-earn games is enough to make a living or greatly supplement their current income for people below the poverty line. So it really is a huge development in the space, right? And as well as he said a while ago, in regards to providing services to the community, the the community has had a lot more options in regards to how they interact with Web3 in terms of GameFi, cryptocurrencies, and all that good stuff, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to add a bit. So, one of the reasons why I am so bullish about this space, both living in the Philippines and looking at the evolution of the industry, right, is that I believe that GameFi plays a critical role introducing people into the blockchain, right? It's a way to educate people, and those ultimately become investors. They become um, actual, like, savvy users of different protocols and different interfaces, right? What we've been seeing is that many people come for the games, they start playing some of these games, and they enjoy it, but they also become discerning users of all sorts of protocols and blockchains, right? And when you live in the Philippines, you see that there are millions of people doing this. They're so used to owning an NFT, so used to now saving tens of thousands of dollars, like as families and as individuals, basically just sending money point to point instead and avoiding those hefty fees that they used to pay, right? So I think what's very important is that GameFi is obviously all about the quality of the games, the quality of the community, and the role that guilds have played introducing people into these games has been critical. But then I see it as a critical part of the entire blockchain ecosystem, and very, very frequently the first touch point that then introduces them to everything else, right?
So I'm curious. A lot of people have mentioned that, you know, how the gaming economy kind of allows the gamers to kind of become either investors or earners and how it affects their everyday life. So has that, in your view, become kind of an integral part of Web3 gaming, and is kind of the internal game economy no longer just an internal game economy, but part of a broader kind of global economy?
So, to kind of touch on like what these guys were alluding to earlier, like one of the things I've been hearing, I get asked a lot these days is like, how long do I think this bear market in crypto is going to last? And what I often say these days is that it'll last only as long as like as soon as we have a game that traditional gamers, non Web3, non crypto native people want to start playing, and we grow the user base of Web3 gamers from wherever it is today. I believe I've seen numbers around 3 million players, and we start to introduce the next 10 million, 100 million, and ultimately a billion plus players. Like I think once we start seeing that path, like being activated, where we start to onboard real traditional gamers and in large numbers, that's when we're going to start to see the bearish market in crypto turn around. I mean, this is independent of kind of the global macroeconomics picture, but if it's independent of that, like I think that's what's going to really start to put a little fire underneath the crypto market. And so I think gaming is going to spark that. So what is the game economy like? Kind of the questions about the game economy. And so for me, what that means is that like we are introducing people who are playing the game and spending money in the game and completing the ecosystem. Because today, we have investors, we have earners, and those will come. Those will continue to come. But what we've got to do as game developers or GameFi folks is activate a way for traditional gamers who play games and spend money in the games and provide that part, the demand portion of the economy, we need to get them onboarded. And part of it is, just a great fun game. Another part is, easing the onboarding of those players, education, and that's where guilds, I hope, will play a pretty integral part. And I think when you have that, we'll be able to complete the economy. Unfortunately, right now, most games that I've seen are missing that portion, and it's not surprising because great games take a long time to develop, and it just hasn't been long enough since GameFi really took off for there to be a game that appeals to traditional gamers, let alone figure out how to onboard them and activate them as the demand side of this whole economy.
Does the tooling then help, or is it still kind of a function of the games? Like if you create, liquid markets around these assets, does that make players more engaged, right? I think we have a number of speakers that are working with kind of creating liquid markets or collateral markets around NFT assets. Does that improve user onboarding?
I think one thing that we've seen a good bit of is less so like the details of liquidity being super important to people, and more just like the pure user experience benefits of. One of the biggest things that we've talked to with games is about the ability to sell assets, and when you have these like game native and they're crypto native assets where you're pretty much your only option to sell them is listing them on a marketplace. The flow that interrupts in the game, if you have to wait for the asset to sell, whether it's over an hour, a day, a week, whatever it is, ends up ultimately being a lot less valuable. And so being able to implement things like market sells in games is one of the benefits that I think liquidity brings, that you ultimately don't really have access to unless you have some of these more intricate financial tools. So I think it'll definitely long-term be very important to have a lot more liquidity around the assets for the game to be playable. But in the short term, probably is more important to have the game be a lot of fun building that up. So.
Oh yeah, just to add to that, right? I do agree with all of what these guys said, and we at FreeDAO, we actually tackle the supply side of the economy, right? So we do create assets in scale in 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 the specifications of the guilds that we service, right? So for example, if a guild requires a specific trait or stat that an asset may require, for example, an Axie Infinity, where a certain build is required to fit a certain meta, we actually act as market makers in that certain game. So we do help the community procure better assets, and so they can have a better user experience in the game itself, right? So.
Yeah,
Really,
I think tooling.
I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Sorry for interrupting. Yes, I think tooling is really important in terms of specifically onboarding because, let's be honest. I mean, we were doing some campaigns with different games, and one of the most liked posts on Medium is how to add Polygon to MetaMask. I mean, for many players, they are really new to space, and it's hard for them to get grasp of all the tech that is behind them. So the tools that will help players, or users to understand and to make their process of integration to the community smoother are probably will probably play a huge role in terms of increasing this conversion rates. And then the faster it happens, the faster a big part of those Web2 gamers come to the space, the faster everything will grow. And but important thing here is I think we still as a market we do not know how it's going to work, right? I mean, there are many games out there. Some of them are popular, some of them are not, but there's still no product market fit, I think, because even Like, okay, there are axes, which are out there for quite a long time, but beyond axes, there are not that many games that work for like 6 months, 9 months. So it's also important not to not to optimize the processes that are not yet like fit to market.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I was going to add is that we're really good at the DeFi part of GameFi. Like it's been around longer. We know how to create liquidity, how to lend assets, etc. And those can be spun up pretty quickly. And while there is still room for improvement, I think that part of the business we're pretty mature, and we'll be able to address that fairly quickly. Where we're a little bit behind is on the gaming part of it. And so, if you think about like a player's options, they have so many games to choose from. One day it's Lost Ark, another day it's Elden Ring, and every day it seems like there's another great game that comes out for them to choose from. And a lot of these games, if you don't have a great Fatui, I mean, for those that are not in the game industry, Fatui is first-time user experience, like where you actually kind of do the, onboarding of a player into the game. Like, even if you have a great game, if you don't nail that part, you're going to lose the player because they just don't spend the time unless they're going to be onboarded properly and enjoy the experience that they have. And so, unfortunately, what we do in GameFi today is we throw up a lot of roadblocks. Right, we create, a high barrier to entry in terms of cost, or you have to join a guild in order to get a scholarship in order to get an asset and play, or you have to connect a wallet and create your secure keywords, and that throws up people, gets people worried and scared. So we just, as in the gaming side of GameFi, we've just put up too many barriers to entry, and I think we've got to remove them one by one until such time that it's no less of a headache to play the game than it is Lost Ark or Elden Rings or any other great game that people play today. So, I think we'll get there. We're, like I said it before, I think we're a little early, but certainly we are still we still have a lot of barriers to entry in GameFi.
Maybe I'd add on a little bit to that. I think I totally agree with what Sam's been saying. We've seen a lot of barriers to entry within different games, like Axie Infinity itself. But I think one thing that we need to pay attention to is where exactly the market is for that game itself. Let's say the demographic of the players over in Axie Infinity mostly lies in those in emerging markets. We'd probably understand that there's a huge learning curve for those people to understand how to connect wallets and even, let's say, top up gas fees in the wallet itself in order to transact value from one wallet address to another. I think that's one of the biggest obstacles that here in Metabase we're actually facing with player onboarding. And we're basically trying to integrate tools in which we can help these players try to remove those barriers one by one by introducing them with the ability to easily connect with guilds. And we also provide them with an off-ramp service in which they would not need to handle any cryptocurrency wallets. So I think for especially like Indonesia, where people are not so sophisticated in terms of understanding how cryptocurrency works, I think those kind of features would actually come into play into onboarding the next 100 million of players into GameFi.
I want to follow up on something Luke said. By the way, I do see hands being raised for questions. Please hold your questions until about 10, 15 minutes to the end of the hour. I will call on the audience. But yeah, I just want to let the speakers kind of share their thoughts before I call any audience questions. But I wanted to follow up on something Luke said about complex financial products in gaming. We talk about kind of barriers to entry, and we talk gamers had economic markets for assets and MMORPGs for forever and ever. There were markets for skins, but now we do have complex products. We have structured products. We have options, lending, and things like that. How do you see gamers adopting to a financial world, or is it a new type of user that is helping gamers kind of facilitate liquidity across their assets?
I guess what I think would make the most sense. Obviously, a lot of this has yet to play out as newer, less sophisticated users come into the space. But I think a lot of it is going to come down to finance, the same role finance plays in the normal world, which is just making a lot of common decisions and interactions much easier and very much under the hood and not being so much in your face. Like I think a lot of the current DeFi stuff is very explicitly financial, but I think a lot of the benefits of that stuff end up kind of working its way into maybe the game flow in a way that you might not necessarily realize. And so, an example of that would be, you're doing a collateralized lending protocol with the NFTs as collateral. Maybe you can offer an in-game credit balance, right? Where you basically get some tokens in the game that are actually collateralized by your NFTs. You can spend as much as you want now of this new balance. You pay it back slowly, but you don't even know you're paying it back, right? It's like buy now, pay later, in game, under the hood, whatever. And all these guys know is that they're able to now do a lot more activities in the game by using their existing assets. And it just feels kind of like a little extra money to play around with. Or like kind of one of the examples that I had said is like market selling, right? So like you don't want to be playing your game and then need 50 coins and have to go sell an asset on OpenSea, and then it takes 2 days to sell, and by the time you come back you don't even care anymore. Instead you can just snap your fingers and get whatever that asset is worth at that point in time, and it's more to the user. It just feels natural, but under the hood it does take a lot of financial engineering to make that possible. So at least that's what I've seen so far.
I think what I'm going to say may not be the most popular thing to say, because I do come from the DeFi world and of like self custody and all of that. But I think the newer players that join the GameFi ecosystem are not going to want to handle do the complex transactions that so many of us that originally from DeFi enjoy doing and like doing, having that ownership and responsibility of managing all your assets across different protocols and platforms. I believe that for these folks, they're gonna just want things to be a little bit more seamless and a little bit less involving of their time, and remove the need for them to do all of that research that so many of us have done over the years in maximizing and optimizing our portfolios. And so yeah, I think it's, in some ways the intermediaries that are coming into play that manage these things in a seamless manner for the players is what's gonna it's gonna be necessary and interesting as we kind of evolve this industry.
Yeah, I feel that what's going to be very interesting is how the ecosystem develops, because we see that maturity is really driving the level of specialization, right? And there are some companies that are already extremely good at certain verticals, right? There are some protocols that have been developing fantastic appraisal mechanisms or world-class vaults and custody. So what's going to be, in my opinion, very critical now is who builds very strong UX and who can really adapt and customize the solutions for players, for guilds, and make this work in a seamless manner, right? I've been interviewing a lot of guilds and a lot of players in the Philippines and Vietnam, and what many of them describe is that they tend to be quite intimidated with some of the existing solutions, right? So I think it's very exciting, especially during the current situation and going through the current challenges we're facing in the market, because it's forcing all of us to reconsider some of our things, to partner up with others, and to focus on the things that we really do well, right? And ultimately, it will always be about what the users value and what they what they find relevant and seamless, right? And especially taking into account that most of our users are relatively new to crypto, right?
Okay, yeah, just to add to Carlos' point, I think the problem here is that there is an overwhelming amount of data in this space, and a lot of the new users get overwhelmed with all these metrics, these token prices, the market cap, all the the floor price of all these assets and so forth. So we at ReaderDAO, we actually thought of a solution. We actually made a data analytics dashboard called PlayCore, and then think of it as like the Bloomberg of blockchain gaming, right? So in here we actually provide different data metrics for the different games we're invested in. So for example, we do have a lot of data for like rewards token prices and mint to burn ratio, and the assets being created and sold per day in these different games. So it really provides a one-stop shop for all these different retail investors as well as guilds, just to be able to make better informed decisions should they invest in a certain game or not, right? Because right now a lot of people will have to manually track these data on their own, and they have to put it in the sheet, put it in write it down or something like that, and check it every day. But then we had figured out consolidated all this data into one platform as well to be able to help the community, so more users can be onboarded to the space, right?
One thing I wanted to kind of follow up on, we look at, you know, gaming starting to develop, a more complex economy. We talked about, lending tools. We talk about a lot of data and analytics. But, a lot of these kind of tools assume an existing kind of Web 2 economy almost, right? Like we look at, DeFi kind of bringing in their tools, but in DeFi, we have a fully functioning kind of outside economy. Right now, Axie Infinity was a good example of, how it started to impact the Philippines economy as a whole. We started to see tools where people were being able to use, SLP to pay for their utilities and things like that. Are we at a point where the gaming economy is starting to bleed out into the real economy, but we still don't have tools to kind of adjust and manage the economy inside the game? Like, how does that reconcile? What do we need to do to be able to have a functioning economy in game that doesn't hurt the outside economy as it grows too big or so big?
I guess I don't necessarily have a great answer for how we can avoid impacting the real economy. Although I feel like longer term, that's like kind of where all this more metaverse focused finance stuff is going. Is that it'll blend a bit more with the real economy. I think part of it is like not everybody is supposed to invest in early stage stuff. Like I think all of the decentralized ownership is really important, but it's also like very risky. And like we've seen over the last 2 months or so, just the general bleed out in crypto markets, like people who are very exposed to that stuff don't do very well when they're like the money that they need to live every day is the money that's invested in this stuff. And so I think it's probably about making sure people aren't putting more money into these games than they can afford to lose in the first place. And that if they're earning stuff in there, you make it really easy for them to cash that out as it goes up, and you help kind of build in good financial practices into all of that stuff. And things like borrowing and whatever else are great in good times and probably very dangerous in bad times. And so I think it's probably just as much about like the same kind of general financial practices that apply to managing, a stock portfolio or your paycheck that's normally there. So probably just requires more time for people to understand how things work and not treat it like random game points or whatever, and it's actually money that they need to be thinking about as such.
But is it something that has to start being built inside into the games, right? Like a lot of these tools are currently outside of the games being interacted with, what in an extractive way, right? People extract value out of the games and then trade them through these liquid markets. Do we need to start thinking about having a lot of these tools be more kind of native to the games themselves?
Probably. I also think one of the biggest values, like I think you can already build, like you said, Roblox and some of these Web 2 games, like they have fine in-game economies. I think the real benefit is when you start having the out-of-game economy part play into the game. Like you can build the entire economy without blockchain. The reason blockchain's so important for it is because now you can go outside of the game and do all kinds of cool stuff with either the assets or the cash that you've made. And so like I think it's less about like you sure it would be great to have all that stuff in the games, but like probably the most important thing that GameFi type companies can do is figure out the best ways to make use of that value across the DeFi and the gaming ecosystem in a way that really takes advantage of like what blockchain's good for and doesn't necessarily just try to build things that seem cool, but probably ultimately don't really matter whether or not they're on on chain. And so I think probably the biggest thing is if you're going to build it into the games, like the things that you're building into the games, hopefully leverage stuff that would be pretty much impossible to do or really difficult to do in like a Web 2 gaming economy.
I think it's not that important to have all of that stuff in the game because, especially if we consider some, AAA or AA titles that will be coming out soon, shortly. Because when you have, if data is accessible only inside the game, then that is an entry barrier. Because hey, maybe I do not even want to play the game, right? I just want to, buy an NFT and sell it and something like that, and that is like a whole new layer of interaction with the game without spending enough time, to play the game or like to upgrade your character or stuff like that. So I think that those like marketplaces, landing, and additional services they are outside of the game that might be even better, like in terms of amount of people that are able to interact with that ecosystem.
Yeah, I think also
Because,
building out the ecosystem. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that building out an ecosystem is going to be important, right? Like first, you're going to build the in-game economy and sinks to absorb all of the tokens that are earned and looking to be sold, right? And so that's step one. But after that, it's what else can I build around these, around our tokens and our NFTs? It could be an ecosystem of games, it could be an ecosystem of marketplaces, lending, or whatever it is, and having the ecosystem around it and creating more utility, will kind of create an economy onto itself. And so, I think we're early, and we'll start to see a lot of that coming as I believe. I'm not sure who said that earlier, but as the AA and AAA games come to life in GameFi, we'll start to see a lot more ecosystem building and not just single game economies.
Yeah, completely agree on that. Just wanted to highlight with some example because for example, the skins in Counter-Strike, I know like a lot of people who are not playing Counter-Strike, but they are like trading the skins, which is I think really cool because they know about the game. They can tell their friends about the game, even though they're not, like spending 2, 3, 8 hours a day playing this game. And I think like that level of interaction is really cool, and it's really like designed for blockchain, or like blockchain designed for it, because of the trustless and like permissionless interactions you can really build like around that popular games.
I want to touch on a kind of more complicated subject. A lot of the tooling that's required because of the nature of blockchain requires data, right? Everything from collateralization to kind of complex products to just kind of dashboards, right? Requires data. A lot of these games, they are working to become self-sufficient worlds, but the amount of data and the type of data they expose varies across the ecosystem. How do you build tooling? How do you build financial tooling for the gaming ecosystem as a whole? And how do you treat this data if it's so fragmented?
Well, I think that's a really good question, and I think we don't have an answer to that in terms of we don't have any working product, right? And like the problem is that they're like, okay, if all the data is stored on blockchain, then that's great. It's transparent. You can just grab data from there, and that works. But for sure, like in upcoming, I don't know how many years, but it's probably years. It's not going to be possible, right? Because of as Sam mentioned, they're just games. Games are producing just way too much data, and like for that, I mean, like if it's everything in the game, then probably we have a couple of options. Where first is unifying this data point across the games, which is kind of hard to do, or the other way is just you go and kind of extract the data from the game using some APIs or like SDK, stuff like that. The good thing about it is that if we look into classic games and Web2 games, that's a market of hits. I mean, like probably like 10% of the games are producing 90% of all the information because like there are not that many popular games, and because of that, that might not be a problem because like if there are not that many popular games, like probably less than 100, and they kind of store 95% of all the data points, then that's not a big problem to go and kind of integrate their APIs if they have some. And like big games tend to have those APIs. So I think it's like I'm not seeing here a unified solution that will be working like even in 5 years from now, because we still don't have this for Web2 games.
Yeah, I mean, this is an area that I do spend some time thinking about, and so I kind of approach from two different sides. One from the game developer side, which is Metalcore. We're basically creating a data warehouse that will allow basically anybody to access the data, right? You can create your own data visualization layer on top of our data platform, and you can extrapolate things. You can merge that with, let's say, a more simplistic use would be looking at the win rates in a PvP battle of certain NFT classes versus its market price. And so you're looking for undervalued assets as a trader to anticipate potential appreciation of those NFTs. That's one area we're looking at, kind of unlocking the data so people can run calculations like that. At the umbrella side, one of the reasons I got I got involved in both projects is just Umbrella is Unique's advantage is its ability to activate a lot of data because the data is stored off chain and then it uses on chain proofs to validate the data that's being sent to a smart contract. Like we felt that we could provide the amount of data that a GameFi smart contract might require down the road. But you're right. It's like the amount of data that sits on these games is just outrageous. And we don't know where the highest value adding pieces of data are yet. I mean, there's some basic ones that obviously, like, I was talking about the NFT data, bringing the stuff on chain, bringing 6 win rates of certain players and types on chain may also be beneficial. But I just, right now, it's, as we talk to game companies and other projects, like it's, and kind of the DeFi portion of it, it's still not clear like what data we need to bring on chain, but we have the means, right? We can't bring all of it on chain, but like we have the means to bring relevant, important data on chain, and it's just going to take a little time for us to figure that out. And I think sessions like this and gatherings that down the road will help us facilitate that kind of acceleration of bringing that data on chain. But I do think we do have the means to bring that on chain today.
Yeah, another layer to that is we, for example, made an experiment where we like the other way around, and as Sam mentioned, like win rates of players, stuff like that, that can really be done through the soulbound NFTs. And that's an experiment that we were running where the idea was that, for example, you're a great player in Fortnite, and we want you to be able to prove that with using like blockchain. And yeah, from the gamers, we've seen a lot of great feedback, and a lot of them were interested in that, even though like most of them, they do not know about, like they're still not really used to the Web3 gaming. So I think in terms of some stuff like achievements and how specific players perform, that is not that hard of an issue. But when speaking about like the data where you need it real time, like the NFT prices or like NFT performances, that is becoming a bigger issue. It's hard to do.
Yeah, just to add to their points, actually, I do agree that data is needed to help people understand more about the space, right? To their point a while ago when they said that the good players need to be studied to actually study how they perform and the yield that they generate, right? So, for example, in most popular example is Axie, right? So we are exploring. We at Reader are actually exploring, different options on how we can make our data analytics dashboard application better. So, for example, we can add different meta builds that are updated real time and this data is very important because it shows the win rate of these players and shows that these kind of builds are meta builds that are actually working in the space. So it, there really is a huge opportunity here for data to be presented in a much more friendly manner. So a lot of these retail gamers would be able to see how these big players play in the Web3 space or even just in Web2 in general, right? So yeah.
By the way, if you're in the audience and you have a question, this would be a good time. You can raise your hand. We'll call you up and you'll have a chance to ask these wonderful speakers a question. Until such time, I want to talk about kind of what it is that everybody is looking forward to. What do you think is kind of the one key or several key tools that are missing that will unlock some of the kind of the GameFi value that we're currently building out? What is it that you're looking forward to in the next wave?
I think the quality of games are going to increase. I think we're starting to see, if you watch kind of the streaming and YouTube videos, like we're starting to see actual gameplay footage that looks interesting and compelling as a for a traditional gamer. So I'm pretty excited about that. But more than that, like I think some of the onboarding tools. So, for example, today, with the exception of one wallet I can think of, you kind of still need to manage the native token along with, if you're playing a game that has there's a dual token system. Along with those two tokens, you have to hold whether it's your Matic or ETH or whatever it is that the native token of that chain. I think starting to see some solutions that are kind of overcoming that. I think that's an area that I'd like to see some improvement because I don't think traditional gamers want to manage so many tokens. And then I'm also excited about kind of the emergence of, super nodes or what Polygon used to call edge network. I forget what they call it now. Avalanche is subnet. I think kind of monolithic, large single chains are proving itself to be, not designed to handle multiple games, especially as we onboard more and more players. And so, kind of these emerging ecosystems around these layer threes or side chains or whatever we want to call it today. I think that's pretty interesting, and I think that needs to be an area that we invest and develop together as a community.
Oh, just to add to that point, right? I am also excited for the shift from play to earn games to play and earn games. So right now, I believe we are in phase one, which is the play to earn stage, and I think this stage will need to evolve in order to reach mass adoption, and it will have to cater to a larger audience of gamers who each have their own different methods on how they play the different games, right? And I believe phase two, which is play and earn, this will be a more sustainable model for the GameFi industry, wherein there's a role for every type of gamer in this space, right? And yeah, to add to Sam's point, the infrastructure and the onboarding process has to be streamlined in the sense that these traditional gamers do not have the patience or the patience to be able to learn all these different processes in order to just play the game, right? So as the more and more DAOs or the more and more dApps actually focus on streamlining or making the value chain more efficient or the onboarding process easier, the more we'll see a big shift towards play and earn.
Kind of want to follow up on that, JC. Where do you see financial tooling play? Like, what role will they play in the context of play and earn?
For financial tooling, I think it really depends on how these tools are able to onboard the the players, right? So as I've mentioned, these tools have to be streamlined in the sense that the number of steps to be able to invest in a certain game or play is has to be shortened, or maybe at least made a lot easier. As to Sam's point a while ago, there a lot of people are holding like double. A lot of games require double tokens, whether it be Matic or ETH or SLP, and also these games require a lot of different chains in order to be able to play the game, right? So it there needs to be, tools or financial tools, whether it be layer two, side chains, all of that good stuff, to be able to I guess as make the process a lot more easier. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Oops, sorry, technical difficulty. Yeah, definitely. And if anybody wants to weigh in on that, feel free to jump in. But yeah, I wanted to. If anybody in the audience has questions, feel free to raise your hand. We'll call you up also, and we'll ask our speakers a question. And then yes, just we have a few minutes before the end of the hour. I always try to end with what are you looking forward to? A couple of speakers already kind of had their chance to say that, but yeah, everyone is just go around. Whoever hasn't had a chance to just say what it is that you're looking for in the next few months or a few years. What are you excited about in the context of GameFi?
Yeah, I actually completely agree with Sam, and I think that the most important thing that we are lacking. I mean, like, tools are great, right? But tools are helping to do are helping you to do something that you want to do, and until we have games that players or users want to play, tools will not help. And so I think that the most important thing right now is there to be a couple of games that are really appealing to the gamers, and I really believe that will start happening real soon because of all the cool developers that we're talking to. And many more developers are now focusing on the fun than just building a cash grab and then inflating your token to the floor. So yeah, that is the most exciting thing for me because all that stuff is really seems like to be going to the place where developers think about value and fun as the most important thing.
Cool. I think that would be a pretty good place to wrap up. I wanna thank all of our speakers for joining us and for this session. Everybody who joined us in the audience, thank you so much for listening. We will have a recording as always up in a few days, so you have a chance to re-listen to all of the insights that were shared today. And join us next week for our next session. This is a weekly event. Next week, we'll be talking about casual and hyper casual games in Web3. So it should be another fun one. Once again, thank you everybody for joining, and